Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the B2X Studio podcast, where Jason and I kind of come together, share some thoughts, whether it's marriage and business or just business stuff that we talk about together. Today's topic is going to be a good one, so we are excited to jump right in. So today's topic is about love in business and how to divide roles in your business without dividing your marriage. So I'm excited to jump into this topic. Jason, I think we'll start it off with you. Just kind of, we did not prepare for this, so we're just winging it because that's what we wanted this to be, more of a just kind of off the cuff conversation and how we feel about things. I think both of us are generally, I think we're not super big into totally scripted conversations. We want this to be really more authentic advisement or advice into what we've experienced in our marriage and in business, and hopefully sharing some of that with you. So kind of jumping right in, Jason, I think the best way to start this off is to share maybe how we structure businesses based on skill sets and passions that a person brings into a business. Because a couple weeks ago, we already talked about the different types of entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurial type, the artist type, the manager leader, and how that kind of plays a role in this. So I think this is a really good next step in that conversation where we talk about you and me. We both have run businesses before, and we've come together and actually merged businesses. And so we're bringing a lot of the businesses we run under kind of the built to exit empire, so to speak. And so we're coming together as two leaders in our own businesses with our own staff members. So how do we make those first steps into figuring out what roles you and I play in the new business?
Yeah, it's interesting being married. Again, I've never been married and in a partnership in business with someone before. And you and I are 8 years into our relationship and probably 2 years into the situation. And it's been really interesting. I would say that the core of why it works with you and I, because I can't speak to other people's experiences, but I can say why it works for us. One is that there's a deep trust factor that comes into it. We trust each other. Um, we talk about the end game all the time. We have a unified end game that is very specific, and the numbers and what we want out of our next thing, right? There's always a next, and next, and next, and next for us, but that next jump for us, we're both lockstep and crystal clear on what it is, and then we know where we are. And the assessment, it's the B2X strategy. It's like, know your end game, assess where you are, build the strategy to be able to get there, just like we did with our wedding. And so I think that's where the whole journey starts, is in the perspective of trust. Second thing, before I throw it back to you, because it's really important, I don't want to forget it, is we love being around each other. Like, we're around each other all the time. And people are like, "Oh, you're going to get sick of each other." It's been 8 years. Like, it's not, people that tell us that think we've been together for like 6 months or something, but it's been 8 years, and we love being around each other because of our foundational business, or not, sorry, our foundational personal beliefs of that we live in joy. And you get my best, the things that we talked about on the last podcast, that's foundational. Then trust, then the talents. The third piece, I would say, is you and I have different talents in business, and they really, really do play well off of each other.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to start. And I think it leads right into kind of how that was the first step, and then we were able to sit down from there and define out, and we know each other well enough to know where our skill sets are and where they're not. But also, I think just as importantly, where our passions are and where they're not in building a business. Because you and I are I think we're high achievers in that, meaning that we don't like to lose. And so we will do whatever it takes in our businesses to win, which also means we will take on any roles that we need to in order to win. So it may not be a role or position that we necessarily like or have a passion for, but we will do that role or position in order to succeed until we bring a staff member in to take that over. And we are fast tracking. We really accelerate business growth. So we're building, one of the coolest things is seeing how we are building these new entities, basically truncated down what takes most people 2, 3, 5 years to build. We're building in within 8 months, which is amazing. But it means we wear a lot of hats until we develop out the SOP and the processes and procedures for that. And then we hand it off to one of our staff members because we know how to build it correctly, and then we hand it off to the people who have a passion for a particular role. A great example is our GM. She is amazing at what she does, and she doesn't need micromanaged, and she actually helps build out and develop the processes because we have trained her on the new company and how we want the culture to look and how we want the business to look, what the outcomes are, and then she can take it and run with it. So I think you and I, we've defined a chairman and chairwoman position for ourselves, which I think is the outcome of the business. And in the meantime, we take on other roles, whether it's sales or stepping on stage and speaking and things like that. So I think it's a really great exercise. And I think it's very important for couples to establish what they enjoy, what they're good at, and then define the roles from there. So I think, Jason, this might be a really great I know we're actually already almost 10 minutes into this podcast and we want to keep this brief, but I think a great towards the close topic is what steps a couple should take when they are defining those roles in business. Because I do think a lot of times things may fall on one spouse or another because no one's actually talked about it, which could lead to a little bit of a sense of unhappiness when a spouse is taking on a role that they kind of fell into because they saw a need there. They didn't want to fail. They didn't want to see the business fail. So they stepped into that role, but it's not the right one. So how do couples communicate what they like, what they have a passion for, what they're good at with their spouse? What is the timing of that? When should they have that conversation? And what does that look like when it plays out?
Yeah, a really great place for people to look at this conversation is basically your org chart. And again, it grows if it's just you and your husband, you and your wife, whatever the thing is. There's a core to, and those of you that have gone through the B2X system, you'll understand where I'm going with this. Is that there is a core fundamental org chart. Everybody's like, well, AI is changing. Look, there's nothing new under the sun, and you always come back around to principles in business. And the principle is that there's got to be one decision maker at the top called the CEO. That doesn't mean that you lord that position over, but if you're in a discussion with between man and wife, somebody has to be the ultimate decision maker, and that's the CEO role. And then you have somebody who's going to be in charge of the finances. That has a whole wing. That then you have who's going to be the head of the operations, which is the execution on the promise, and then who's going to be in charge of sales, marketing, and customer service. And it's suited, like the best thing for you to do is write down those 4 roles. Number 1, there is somebody that's the ultimate decision maker, and then finance, operation, and sales and marketing. Figure out which one is best at that. This isn't a discussion for you to say which one do you like the most, because that's not important. Which one are you best at? Who is going to, of the 2 of you, is going to get the best results out of that? And then those responsibilities, which ones you're making decisions in. It's about a hat. So let's say that in our circumstances, you took the CEO role and sales and marketing, and I took operations and finance. I would be wearing a hat between operations and finance, and you would be wearing the hat between sales and CEO. And so we would know which one we're talking to. Hey, I need to talk about money, and I need to talk to the person who's making the decisions. I need to talk to the CEO, right? And so we know which hat we're wearing, and also the speed at which you go, okay, cool. You're wearing the hat of sales and CEO. You hate the CEO role. Best thing we can do is get that systemized and SOP'd out as fast as we possibly can, and then go purposely onboard somebody that's getting the results that you set. So that's a really great basic place to start because it breaks up the four main components. I know there's a tech component as well, but the main four components of running a business.
I love that. And I think there's a really good nuance here, because I was speaking in the beginning in terms of what you're very good at and what you have a passion for. And Jason, it sounds a little bit conflicting to say, hey, it's not what you enjoy, it's what you're best at. And I think that's a key distinction because when I say something, a role that you're good at and you enjoy or you have a passion for, to me, that is tied hand in hand together because I've seen so many people burn out because they stepped into a role because they said, hey, I need a CFO in my business right now. I hate this. So I'm not, but I can do it. And then they end up kind of burning out in that position, and that portion, that kind of pillar in their company doesn't go anywhere. And Jason, what you're saying is, it doesn't matter if you necessarily like it or not. If you need it and you have the skill set for it, or you can learn the skill set for it, you can develop that out. I think, and that's where I think both of those ideas merge is where if you actually have a passion for that position, you might want to stay in that position for a while. And then because you really like to develop that out, if you hate it, that might be the first position you build up to hire and fill that role instead of you. At the end of the day, though, even if you have a passion for the particular, especially from an artist perspective, like an entrepreneur artist, you may have a passion for some of the work product you're producing for your clients, but that doesn't mean you should stay in that role forever. Because if your goal and your outcome in your business is to grow it so that you can be free from that business and enjoy life and the freedoms that come with it financially and time and everything like that, then even if you love that position, you can build your company so that you can drop in whenever you want and kind of fill that joy and then step out and continue to do what you love outside of that or start another business or whatever that looks like. But you shouldn't be tying yourself into the day-to-day of your business as an end goal, even if you're passionate for that position. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Jason?
Yeah, there's two different roles. I mean, when you're building out a staff who's going to be executing as your team, that's one thing. You and I, in this particular instance, are talking to business owners who are married, and in our role of owner of the business, chairman of the company, doesn't really like our passion is in life in general is going to be financed by a business that's built to exit. You said it perfectly. You said you should never really build yourself into being needed in the business in the first place. So your passions, whatever you're great at, whatever you love, can be met outside the business or starting another business or, like you said, dipping in, doing the role. You and I both enjoy going and speaking and teaching, and those two things happen to fill and funnel business to all of our companies. So we're going to do that till the day we die because we love doing it and we have a talent for it. But I sat in a seat for 2 years. Carlos Chavez, who's my COO, has been for 20 years. He's a very manager leader person, and I took that was my weak spot where organization. I can do a lot of big thinking. I'm entrepreneurial, deal making, bring in money, that kind of thing. But I knew for me to be a complete, well rounded business owner, I needed to sit in a seat that I hated. And I did it for 2 years. I sat in Carlos's seat. I learned how he thought. I learned what was important to him. That helped me understand my business and how I was building them out and who I was building them out for at a much deeper level because I did something that I hated and could not wait to get out of, by the way. But it was, I knew when I was at the end of that, now I know and understand how to build out those systems and processes. So to wrap it all up, your point, really well made, is that it doesn't matter if you love it or not. Doesn't even, it just matters of which one you're best at, and you're dividing those roles between spouses. You want to get it the best person in that job, regardless of whether they like it. And even if you don't like it, it's actually an extra incentive to build the processes and procedures faster so you don't have to do it for very long.
That's a really great point. That's an excellent point. And, I think there was and Jason, you and I talk about this a lot because it really gets my goat when I see it on social media. There have been instances where we see kind of these startup companies, husband and wife, whatever that, or couple, I don't know if they're, married or not in any particular situation, but they're starting a business together. And then this just really makes my blood boil. And Jason, I think you know what I'm about to say. I have seen where one partner basically wants to do the easy work, like post on social media, talk about him or herself a lot. And then the other person is doing all of the work in the background. And sorry, I had to shut my other computer off. The other person is doing all the work in the background. And the reason we know it is because the person who's just kind of on social media and doing their own flaunting is, we have seen instances where they put a spotlight on the other person who's doing all the grunt work. They're taking all the hats in the business because that person is probably like, yeah, it has to be done. No one else is doing it. I guess I got to do it. So that person steps up. And then the other person is like, I want to give a shout out to this person because I'm CEO. And it goes back to what you said, Jason. It's CEO or any sort of manager position, management position, leadership position is not meant to, if your focus is on the title, I think that could be a clear indicator that maybe you're not ready for that title, because if that's all you're focused on and you're not focused on what it takes to be in that role, or you're, like you said, Jason, lording it over someone, that can be a really big problem. And I would bet, we kind of take a look at some of these businesses where we see that, and we kind of tabulate with each other how long we think that business will actually last, because someone's going to burn out and it's going to be the person doing 99% of the work. And I bring that up because when you're building out a business, the worst thing you can do is come in a disorganized fashion, not start from that org structure like Jason spoke about, and then just hand off a bunch of work in a chaotic way. And then someone who is a really hard worker is going to step in and fill all the pockets because they can identify those needs, and then they're going to be burned out. And then they're going to be disgruntled, and then they're going to resent you. So it's so important to start from the org structure, and then kind of assign the different roles and positions based on the role that you've assigned and identified. Because if it's haphazardly done, you might have someone who came in as a management position on the operational side, and then suddenly you're handing them a sales role with no expectations defined, and that person becomes very confused. You resent them because they're not doing the job that's in your head that you've never put on paper. That person's resentful because they're doing 100 times more work without any real defined outcome to achieve. You've never asked them their WIFMs, which we'll talk about another day. So there's so much that tumbles out of that. It just snowballs and it's chaos. And we have a lot of clients that start that way, and then we have to unravel all of that to get them started from the right foundation. So do it right to begin with, and you won't have this problem. You won't need to hire us to fix all that mess. You can actually have it organized right from the get-go. So thank you so much for joining. Jason, any final thoughts as we close out?
I think it becomes clear for everybody watching this, the business is complex. It's not easy. We are doing these shows because we know that. And part of the whole premise behind B2X, whether you ever do business with us or not, is that you consume our content and business gets easier for you. You're able to make key distinctions for you in your own company. And just know, all of us at B2X, me and Emily and the entire team, we have so much respect for what you do. The fact that you are a business owner at all, and on top of it, you're watching shows like this to educate yourself further. So feel free to reach out to us, ask us any questions. This is a complex issue. We've done so many interactive programs, deep dives, and so many different businesses. Sometimes we have felt like marriage counselors, and at the end of the day, the idea is to have a really great time and build something epic that you're eventually able to exit and be able to live the life that you choose. So never forget that. That's why we're here. If you have any suggestions for us, please send them in. We love what we do. We love each other. We love doing what we do with each other, and we love our team. So we hope that comes across, and you can learn some stuff from us.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining. You can check out more information about Built to Exit at built2exit.biz, or you can catch this full episode on YouTube. And then we have clips that we cut on other social media platforms. Of course, reach out to us with any questions at all. Like Jason said, if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss or any questions about your business, you can go on to built2exit.biz and click into the Calendly, schedule a call with our senior strategist, or you can submit an intake form or shoot us an email at info@built2exit.biz, and we can get a call set up with you today. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.